2019 Monster Energy Cup track review. Let's get it. Haven't played Reflex in a minute. You know what it is. This is made by Dark Slides, basically one of the biggest dudes still playing the game, still making tracks for the game, still involved in the community of the game. Like, you guys really need to go give some support to Dark Slides. He's got his whole website. He's basically made a replacement Reflex Central website because you can't even fucking download any of the tracks on Reflex Central anymore, especially if you don't already have an account. Like, that whole side of all of that is totally basically pushed down into the ground. Like, you can't really do too much with that anymore. So, if you're having trouble downloading tracks on like Reflex Central, or you can't get your email shit set up properly because they never send you a activation email thing, all you got to do is go to the Dark Slides website. He's got all the tracks on there. He's got all the shit on there. I'll leave a link down below in the description to that and in the comments to his website where he's got all the custom tracks. It's basically just a better Reflex Central. So if any of you guys are trying to download this track or you're looking for that, I'll put that down in the description so you guys know what the hell's going on. But basically, the same guy that's doing that whole website, basically making one of the biggest lifesaver things of the game, basically, right? He's the one that made this track as well, and he's made countless amounts of other tracks out there too. So definitely a round of applause just for the, not just this track in particular, but just the lifelong community, input and dedication, and like that's some definitely legendary, recognizable shit right there, because he's really doing everything he can to try to keep Reflex on PC custom track stuff alive as much as he can, and it's definitely respectable because this game's been through a lot. It's lasted a long time, but it's been through a lot of bullshit as far as like just trying to keep the game going with Reflex Central shutting down and all that. So it's definitely been something for sure. So either way, as you guys know, there's about 69,000 different directions that you can go on this newer Monster Energy Cup, because they're going to have multiple different, good Lord, Ricky Carmichael, how many different things can you do, man? Like, holy shit. So there's going to be basically like 3 or 4 tracks within one track, right? And it's going to be running like a different track every race or whatever the hell. So let me just explain how impossible that really is to do that in a motocross video game, that you're not like a full-blown coder and like somebody that really does all this. It's not easy to make that happen. So I know Dark Slides did say in his description that he couldn't make the track exact because of that reason specifically. He's trying to make it to where it will work in all the 3 or 4 different tracks of this one individual track. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty insane, but of course, Ricky Carmichael's got to try to outdo himself every year, and sometimes it makes something cool, sometimes it makes something a little bit like unrealistic, a little bit too far-fetched, and then it kind of makes it weird. But yeah, I certainly hope they don't bring this into like the normal Supercross, kind of how they brought the Triple Crown format thing from the Monster Energy Cup to normal Supercross. They need to stop doing that shit. Like the whole Monster Energy Cup, that's what it's all about. It's supposed to be that weird, kind of different, you never know what you're going to get. It's not a part of the normal season. Like FIM, AMA, whatever the fuck. Stop trying to put that into the normal Supercross stuff, man. Stop trying to do that. It doesn't belong there. It's never belonged there. It's always belonged in the Monster Energy Cup. Leave it where it's at. You know what I mean? But either way, yeah, if you like saw the track map or whatever and you see a couple little different things, you're like, what the hell, that's not how the actual real life track is. Well, let me just say, it's probably a little bit more difficult than you might expect to make this all work in an actual, video game, as far as just making like random community created content, right? It's going to be a lot harder to make this kind of stuff work. So, but either way, cool to see this replica track. I mean, Jesus Christ, this game came out in what? Fucking 8, 09? When did Reflex come out? At least a decade ago. And there's still 2019 Monster Energy Cup replica tracks being made for the game. Like, that's just so crazy, dude. That is literally insane. Like, some of you guys that don't really play Reflex or whatever, can I go out here without? Yeah. Okay, so this is like that whole... So there's 2 completely different starting gates, right? So what Dark Slides had to do here was basically make 3 or 4, I think he's got 4 maybe separate, completely separate individual actual, tracks when you go into the raceable version. This is the free ride version right here, so I can just kind of go wherever the hell I want to go. And I did that for a reason, so that I kind of show you all of the track and not be so in just one round of the track, one version of the track. I mean, what really is there to say? It's pretty much all you could ask for in the modern day reflex replica track design stuff right here. And when they try to go in there and make these like one-to-one replica tracks, it's going to kind of not have quite the fun factor as like some of those tracks that get a little bit more on the fantasy scaling. See, like even this track right here, like if you compare this back to the default tracks of Reflex, like the tracks that came with the game, you guys know those Supercross tracks, right? Like there's not a Supercross track in the original default Reflex that is this like tight, small, one-to-one scale. There's not a track this small in the entire game when you talk about the default track. So it's almost like when people go in here and make these like replica one-to-one scale tracks, it's almost like you're getting a gameplay, like a track design that wasn't even meant to be in the game before. So it can give it a little bit of a bizarre, like, I don't really know exactly how to explain it. And I don't know any other better way you could have done it because, you're trying to make that replica track. So, like, I understand it at the same time, but in the same token, it's like I could see where a lot of people would think this track is, like, boring as shit compared to, like, the default Reflex Supercross tracks. And that goes with a lot of the replica tracks on Reflex. There's a lot of those, like, one-to-one scale style tracks on Reflex, and it just really gives her a different vibe, It gives her a different feeling to the game. It's cool, like, visual, and it's cool to have that exact one-to-one replica track, but I don't know. There's a certain, like, it's just kind of boring. You know what I'm saying? Like that's kind of been my opinion on a lot of the one-to-one scale replica tracks of Reflex. They're just kind of boring to me. I don't know. That's kind of the only way I can say that. But that finish line is interesting. What the hell is that? It's like a little tire tap type finish line. Huh. That'll be interesting to see that. Yeah, I think there's a quad in the middle of that section right there. But it's just like a whole different game when you get on these one-to-one scale replica tracks from the like standard default Supercross tracks. If you know those tracks, you'll know what I'm saying, how it is literally an entirely different like game when you go from those tracks to these kind of tracks. It's just a whole different animal, but it's cool. He's got all the Monster Energy logos everywhere. He's got everything all around. Definitely sick. You just can't really ask for much more. I mean, when you talk about like just that random community created, exact replication tracks of a new track, like you just can't complain too much. You know what I mean? Because this is not like a full-blown professional series type thing going on where they're really getting paid to do it and all this it's not like RF on MX Simulator making tracks or like what. It's just a dude out there wanting to come in here and support the community and make these tracks is basically all it is. So, the complaint level can't be nowhere near as high as what it would be on an actual professional organized organization that's getting paid to make the tracks and all this type of shit. That's completely different. But like for Dark Slides coming here and do this just out of the love of the game and just out of the love of the community and just to do it, like, you got to respect that shit. I mean, that's definitely, that's what I've tried to do with MX Simulator as much as humanly possible. Has there been a lot of occasions where I've completely ripped people apart and disagreed with things to the maximum and fucking shit on things in the game? Yes, there's been more than a few times I've done that, but it's all for what I feel like is the good of the game. It's all for what I feel like is the future of the game. You may not agree with that, and that's whatever, but in my mind, it is that way. It's the way I think the game should be. It's the way I think the professional organization should be, and things like that. And sometimes you got to get a little rough. You got to get a little rough and tough, boys. I'm telling you, like, if you don't, people will walk all over you. Your opinion will never be heard. Sometimes you just got to say it like it is. You got to suck it up and fucking say it like it is, because sometimes it needs to be said. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like It's kind of like on fucking Roadhouse, you know what I'm saying? Like in Patrick Swayze, right? It's kind of like when he said, right, you want to be nice until you can't be nice anymore, right? And that's kind of, a lot of people might not think I'm that way, but I am that way. I'm a nice guy. I try to be nice as much as I can. I try not to do that shit as much as I possibly can. But it gets to a point where you can't be nice anymore. You can't be. People do some shit, and it gets to that point where there is no more being Mr. Nice Guy. You can't be that anymore, right? And then sometimes that's just the way it is. So, but either way, stadium looks sick. He's got all the different renditions, different individual tracks within the one track here. He's got all these little sections. I mean, I haven't really looked too hardcore on the track map. I know some people's probably like sat down, like fully analyzed it and shit. I haven't really paid that much attention to it, but it'll be interesting to see it in the actual race. But I don't know. Got the really long sand section. They'll probably be jumping big into that. And then the Talladega corner up here. But yeah, I mean, what more can you ask for? Just wanted to come here and check this out. I don't even know what the hell to give this overall. I'm going to say probably like I think it would have been cool for Dark Slides to have maybe injected just a little bit more fun factor, a little bit more fantasy, give her a little bit more excitement, you know. But I see why he does a 1-to-1 scale like this, because he wants to make it as realistic as he possibly can. But at the same time, I don't know. These are not really my cup of tea when it comes to reflex tracks. I've never really been the biggest fan of these 1-to-1 scale. They're just boring. The jumps are boring. The rhythms are boring. Everything about them is just kind of boring. You just feel like you're kind of playing this. It's like reflex, but on a way cramped down, smaller, more boring track, basically, right? And it's not going at the replication of it, because I feel like the replication of it's really well, but I just think there could have been a little bit more, like, jump fun factor, you know, shit like that kind of injected into it, because reflex has always been known for that. In any arcade game, really, you know, even if you're trying to make a replica 1-to-1 scale track, if you don't inject a little bit of fun factor, like a little bit more bigger scale fantasy, if you don't inject at least a little bit of that, it's going to be boring because you're playing an arcade game. Now, when it comes to MX Simulator, when you go in there and make a 1-to-1 scale MX Simulator track, it's not as bad in that game, because even on a really small jump, like simple 1-to-1 scale track in that game, it's still a lot of fun because you have the simulator physics going on, right? But when you try to put that 1-to-1 scale exact 100% track scale replication into an arcade motocross game, it kind of gets this weird dimensional twist where you've got all these like arcade type physics, but you're on a simulator scaling track, and so it makes it feel a little bit weird, you know? It makes it feel kind of more boring, less fun. So I certainly think, I don't know, there's just two different ways to make replica tracks. You know, you got that whole 1-to-1 scale, and then you got the whole where you kind of amp her up a little bit, give it that fun factor, so you still kind of have the replica track side, but it gives it more fun. So there's kind of two different ways to do it there, but he definitely went with more of the 100% 1-to-1 scale on this one right here. So I could see where a lot of longtime reflex players might get a little bit bored of this track right here. Running more than, 5-6 laps on it. I could certainly see that. But other than that, I mean, what more can you say, man? It's solid stadium, solid objects, all perfect on all that kind of stuff. It's just as far as like, the personal, like how you want to design that replica tracks, what it comes down to. And I mean, I don't know. It's got its own, positives and minuses, like doing it either 1-to-1 scale or a little bit more fantasy. It's got its positives and subtractions with both, multiplications. It's just kind of one of them things like, I don't know. I just personally like a little bit more fun factor in it than the 100% 1-to-1 scale, but that's just me. So either way, I'm going to give this puppy like I would say maybe like a 8 overall. And I'm going to say the difficulty, you're looking at easy. Easy difficulty, dog. So either way, appreciate you guys watching all the videos. Later, dudes.